Hello friends, I'm Angie and this is If the Creek Don't Rise. There's something pretty delicious about comfort food any time of the year, but it's even better, it seems like, when it's cold and there's snow on the ground and you're hunkered down, keeping warm in the wintertime. This video, I'm going to show you some of our comfort food favorites, and I think you're going to enjoy it all. We started the week off with a big pot of soup. I am making the Copycat Olive Garden Zuppa Toscana. It is so delicious. It's one that I don't make really often, but we love it so much. I don't know why I don't make it more. We're going to start off by sauteing some onions in my Dutch oven here with some butter. We're just going to get those sauteed for a few minutes until they are translucent. Next in goes the garlic, and it's time now for the potatoes. Once I get those all together and stirred around so everything is incorporated, I'm going to put in the chicken broth and a little bit of pepper. Lucky for me, I had already browned up 1 pound of Italian sausage. Back around Christmas time, I made double and ended up not needing to use the whole thing. So 1 pound I used, 1 pound I put in the freezer. So what a handy thing to pull out today for this soup. I was glad to have that little shortcut, saved me some time. So I got that in, stirred it around, and also from my freezer, I pulled out some kale. I think you can use spinach or kale. Either one would be just fine. I've probably used both before, but I am pulling this out to put into the soup. And one great thing about this, it may look like a bunch, but it cooks down quite a bit. I decided I was going to use the whole thing. So it's so convenient to just have things like this in your freezer that you can pull from, and that's what I've been really concentrating on this month, is using the things I have in my freezer and in my pantry. So this was a little more than what the recipe called for, but hey, a little extra kale is not going to hurt anyone. All right, this has all been doing its thing together. Everything is tender. I decided to pour in some shaky cheese, some Parmesan. Stir that around. I don't think the recipe calls for that. And then I'm going to put in my heavy cream. You put your heavy cream in at the end when everything is pretty much done. Of course, as always, look below in the description box. I'll have the recipe that I used to make this delicious Copycat Olive Garden Zuppa Toscana. Basically what you need is potatoes, some kale or spinach, you need some sausage, and some heavy cream. That's the main components of this, and I'm sure if you Googled this Copycat recipe, you could find several different ones, but I'll put below the one that I use, and I don't think I use the same one every time. I just look one up when I'm ready to make it. I think this is James's actually. Yeah, this is his. He put some croutons in his. Look how delicious this is. The potatoes, the sausage, so good together. I toasted up some buns that I had, put some cheese on there, and had that with mine. Such a delicious meal. I'm pretty sure we can't talk about comfort food if we aren't including some cornbread or some homemade biscuits. I think those are pretty much one and the same. Actually, I'm going to show you both in this video, but first let's start with the cornbread. So in this night's meal, I am stirring together some cornbread. I've made this so many times on my channel, but I don't measure it, so it's usually the self-rising flour and cornmeal. I use a little bit more of the cornmeal. I also use self-rising cornmeal. I put an egg, I put mayonnaise, that's kind of my secret ingredient, I guess. And then I always use water. But this time I'm using milk because I had an excess of milk and I knew this would be a good way to use some of that up. So just stirring that together here. Like I said, I don't measure it. I just make it by feel and look. And this is how my mom makes cornbread. So this is how, I was taught to make it. And it's honestly just absolutely delicious, if I say so myself. So we're getting the cornbread stirred together, and what I was so incredibly hungry for was fried cabbage and cornbread. That just sounded so good to me. So here's my little cornbread skillet, this iron skillet. My mom also gave me this, and nothing gets fried or used. This gets used in no other way but to make cornbread. So I got that in there. And then here are my pork sirloin chops that I am making for dinner tonight. I got those on a really good deal, and they were 2 really nice sized sirloin chops. So what I'm doing here is mixing some flour with some panko breadcrumbs. I'm just going to get my pork sirloin chop in there and put a little bit of pepper and salt, and I'm going to just fry that up in the skillet in some bacon grease. I will show you and tell you more about that here in a second, but just getting these all floured up and ready for the pan.
When I was lost and hopeless, when I was at my worst, it's grace that you extended that I did not deserve. I am so amazed by all you have done. I cannot explain the depth of your love. Limits can't contain the heart of you, God. I'm amazed at the depth of your love.
All right, now that the pork chops are in the pan, I'm going to start on this great big cabbage head. Got this for 28 cents a pound, which was such a great deal on this. I'm only going to use about a third of it. It's really big. So I got these outer leaves peeled off. Going to cut off the section that I want for tonight's dinner. And then I usually do like a triangle type shape cut, removing the core portion of the cabbage. And then, of course, if there are any really sort of thick pieces in there that I don't think will tenderize up as well, I will pull those out as well as I'm slivering up my cabbage. And for my pork chops here, I always do a shallow fry, and I am ready to turn these over. I want to leave them on the side long enough to where it gets a good crust before I turn them. Got these turned over, and let these keep working while I get back to my cabbage. I like my cabbage cut in kind of thinner slivers. That's the way I prefer it. So I'm going to get this thing all cut up and ready for the skillet.
Your mercy came and found me, gave me a second birth. I'm overwhelmed and grateful. You took what I deserve. I am so amazed by all you have done. I cannot explain the depth of your love. Limits can't contain.
When I cook up cabbage, I cook it and season it very simply. I'm frying it in a little bit of bacon grease right now. I am putting in some garlic powder, salt and pepper, and just going to saute that all around. And then I will add some water at the end to kind of steam it off. But the best thing is adding about a tablespoon of sugar. It really does something great when you cook cabbage. If you haven't tried it, I encourage you to try it. Now with anything that I fry, I've said this over and over, but once it has a good crust on both sides, I put in a little bit of water and turn the heat down. That allows the meat to continue cooking and tenderizing, but at a lower temperature, and it kind of steams it. And you will see how this water just cooks completely out, leaves it kind of a thick, almost gravy type consistency. That will ensure that you have a really tender piece of meat when you're frying it, but you have a good crust on there first. All right, it looks like the cabbage is just about done and it's looking delicious. Well, it's certainly making me hungry all over again just watching and editing this. Delicious cornbread for sure. Put some butter in there and I'm just going to start making up our plates. Got the cornbread, of course, the pork chop, and some of that fried cabbage. James put a little bit of chow chow with his. I put a little bit of onion with mine. Chow chow is just like a pickled mixture of all kinds of things. We like to have that with meals like this, with beans and cornbread, that type of thing. This was amazing, just what I was wanting. This night's meal was James' pick. He was wanting some country fried steak, so I picked this up at Walmart last week. Here's what it looks like, and the steak down inside. It also comes with this package of the peppered country gravy mix. The brand is Fast Fixin', and it's about $9-ish, something like that for this. It is really delicious. So that is going to be what we're having tonight. To go along with it, I am making some homemade biscuits. Another thing you've seen on my channel a whole lot. I saw this many years ago on Moss Family TV. I was a person who never made homemade biscuits, and I loved buying the Grands, or the Walmart version of the Grands, and I still buy those from time to time. But honestly, I whip these things up. They're so quick. They are no fail. They work out every time. And this is from someone who never really made homemade biscuits very much. So look below for the recipe. It's so simple though. It's just 2 cups of self-rising flour to 1 cup of buttermilk or regular milk and 6 tablespoons of butter. And you just cut it into little bitty tiny pieces. That way there's little pockets of butter throughout these biscuits. I put a little extra flour to the side and I roll these up, kind of get it in the flour there so it doesn't stick to your hands. Roll them up. Put them in your sprayed pan and they bake in about 15 to 20 minutes. So easy, and you just cannot beat a homemade biscuit. This was also from the oven. Since I was baking my biscuits, I went ahead and chose the oven method for those country fried steaks. They also took about 20 minutes. Very convenient and quick. And then I just made some homemade mashed potatoes and made the gravy that came with it according to the package directions, which just takes water. Very simple meal, but this tasted better than the country fried steak meal that we could get at Cracker Barrel. Look at these homemade biscuits. So fluffy, so delicious and buttery. This was such a comfort food, delicious meal. Just what James was wanting this night, and I just have to say I benefited from his hankering this night because this was delicious. Well, good morning everybody. I am getting a roast in the crock pot, and I am making a roast recipe that I have not made in a long time, probably several years. We love beef roast, and I have several different recipes for it. So let's get going on this one, and I will show you a great recipe for roast in the crock pot. Okay, I don't remember if I said the name of this one or not, but it's called Jana's Pot Roast. And what it takes here are these 3 seasoning packets. So this one I've already used half of it. It's an Italian, and you want to have a ranch, and you want to have an au jus. So these 3 seasonings mixed with 1 cup of water and pour over top, or you can just sprinkle them on and pour in your water. Either which way is fine. And it makes the most delicious roast. I found this recipe years and years ago from She's in Her Apron, and it's a really good one. I don't always cook carrots and potatoes and celery and things in with my roast, but today that's how I wanted it, and my goodness gracious, I'm so glad I did. This was all just so perfect and delicious together. When James came home, he said, you know, I almost called you to ask you, make sure that you could cook some carrots in there, and he said he was just really hungry for carrots, and so we just must have been on the same wavelength there. So after the roast had cooked a good portion of the day, I put these in. When I do put vegetables in, I don't put them in right at the beginning because the meat obviously takes much longer than the veggies, and I don't want the veggies to be completely mushed by the time the meat is done. Next up, I'm just doctoring up the green beans, just canned green beans, not from the garden, from the store. Got some garlic powder and some pepper, got some bacon grease, a little bit of onion in there, and some dried chicken base. And then I never put brown sugar in my green beans, but I did tonight, and it was pretty good. Look at this, guys. This is not the prettiest thing you ever did see. I just tried the roast underneath there with the spoon, and it just went right through it, so I know it's good and tender. Mine was frozen, so it's been on high all day, and I'm kicking it down to low. So it's been in here, I'd say, from, I don't know, 10:30, 10-ish to it's about 10 to 5. And so now I'm just turning it down on low until it's time for dinner. I saw a recipe online a few days ago on Facebook, actually, that had the brown sugar and the green beans. So I thought, we'll give it a try. And it was good. I couldn't really taste it in there, but it did give them a good flavor, I think. So here it is. We got a little roll and some cucumbers, that roast and veggies. Totally hit the spot. Now, like I said, we ate on these a couple of days, but what I did here is this was what we had left over. I just shredded up the beef, and then I added in a can of tomato soup. And when we had this the next time, we had it kind of like a beef stew. So we just kind of ladled it in a bowl and ate it with a spoon. This tomato soup gave it that delicious sort of beef stew flavor, and it was delicious. So this is one of those meals you cook once and you definitely eat twice, maybe 2 or 3 times at that, just depending on how big your roast is and how many people are eating. And this is comfort food at its finest. And when I want a comfort food dessert, a cobbler is at the top of the list. This is a peach cobbler. I use the cup recipe, so it's a cup of self-rising flour, cup of milk, cup of sugar, and some butter. Stir that all around, pour it on top, and tonight I decided to put a dusting of cinnamon on there. So I put some cinnamon across the top. Just delicious every time. You cannot go wrong with the cobbler. It's just so homey feeling. It was definitely something I enjoyed so much growing up. And with that, just go get in the kitchen and make yourself some delicious comfort food. Hope you got some ideas and inspiration today. Drop a comment below what your favorite comfort food is, and I will see y'all the next time. Good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise.